Buyers, are you now on the hook for realtor commissions? More than ever, it is harder and more complicated and more confusing to buy a house. Not only are interest rates up right now, but also the real estate industry is going through some pretty massive changes. Now, I like to think that change is always good. My point today is to help you with real facts, no BS, to understand what's going on. So I'm talking to buyers today. So if you're going to buy a house in the next year, before as things are evening themselves out, you really need to watch this episode. What is everyone talking about? What is this NAR settlement thing? You know, I get questions already like, hey, as of August 17th, I have to pay realtor commissions. That actually is not 100% true. That's, of course, a rumor that's going around that gets twisted, and it's common that people don't understand. So today we are going to go over those questions, and I'd love to hear questions actually. So please use the chat. Please DM me, whatever platform you're seeing us on, and ask me questions. So back in 2019, a few sellers got together. There's no competition. We're not allowed to stray. We're being forced into a corner. That's kind of the gist of it, right? So one lawsuit led to another lawsuit, led to another lawsuit. It was kind of a copycat game, and that's how it happened. It kind of blew up. It happened for a few years. Now, in March of 2024, the National Association of Realtors said, hey, you know what? We need to kind of stop the bleeding. This is just, we need to get back to business, and let's make some concessions. Let's make some amends. Let's make everybody happy. So the settlement lawsuit came up with a few things to avoid what sellers were starting to feel was price fixing. There were antitrust violation concerns and a lack of transparency. When you go online and you search for homes, that's MLS is a listing service where all the homes are normally put. Now, side note here, sellers do not have to put their property on the MLS. The MLS, which is controlled by National Association of Realtors, will no longer show whether or not there's commission offered to the buyer's agent. So taking a step aside here, if you're a buyer, in a lot of transactions, not all of them, there's an agent representing the seller. That's called a seller or listing agent. And then there's a buyer's agent that represents the buyer. In many states, including the one where I live in Texas, it is actually unethical and against all kinds of real estate law for one agent to represent both parties. It's not transparent. It's not it's not cool. Okay, because there's really a lack of who's representing who. So normally in a lot of cases, there's each side is being represented. Okay. So now whether or not the seller is agreeing to include the price of a commission in their sales price, that's not listed anywhere. Also, the buyers have to sign a written agreement before a realtor that is governed by the National Association of Realtors. Before this realtor shows a buyer a home, they have to have a written buyer's representation agreement signed. Now, this has always been the case. I want to pause here for a minute. The form has always been there. It's just been some agents get it signed and some don't. That's a whole other debate for another day. It's really the professional thing to do. Like you've vetted each other. There's a working relationship that's going to be going on. There needs to be an agreement. In lending, when you make a loan application, when you get to the point where you've gotten under contract for the house, we have to have you sign an agreement saying you intend to proceed with us. In any other business that you find a contract or something saying, hey, I'm going to move forward with you, very, very common. So what's happened in the last many years, I've done this for 29 years. In all those 29 years, this buyer's representation agreement has existed. It's just not always used. It's not used 100% of the time, which is probably mistake number one. So from now on, if you're going to see a house, if you're a buyer and you want to see a house, if you have representation, and you might choose not to have representation, which we're going to talk about in a minute. I'm going to give you some things you need to know about that. But you've got to expect that this realtor is going to say, here's the agreement, here's what this means. You discuss a commission, etc. You discuss what's in the agreement, and then you sign, and it means that that realtor is representing you. Okay, so that's what that means. Number 3 is the agents must disclose the amount of compensation that they are going to receive. And it has to be fair and reasonable, which is defined as something that could be a percentage of the sales price. It could be a flat fee, or it could be an hourly fee. Actually, I had a realtor comment to me just this morning. She says, oh, I wish it could be hourly for the hours and hours and hours that realtors spend without any payment at all, showing buyers homes, et cetera, not knowing the outcome. Realtors are paid, and lenders, by the way, are paid when things close. So all the stuff that we do before then is for free. So likely you're wondering, how does this affect me? I'm buying a home in the next year or any future. How is this commission thing? What does it mean? What are you talking about that the seller may or may not pay it? So that's where you want to really pay attention in the next couple of minutes that I'm going to go over that. Okay. So customarily, a seller will offer to pay this fee for the buyer's agent, and it's included in the price of the home. So if you see a home on the MLS, the multiple listing service, for $400,000, and it will say in the where you see the address, it will say what the commission is. So it'll say, hey, we're offering, 1%, 2%, 3%, whatever that amount is. And it's all negotiable, by the way. There's no standard rule for how much the commission is. This is all up to negotiation. But that is what is included in the price that seller is going to use their net proceeds to pay for that. There are going to be more and more sellers that possibly might say, you know what, we want as much money as we can, which is normal for a seller. I got to say, you're human. This is really going to hurt buyers. This is going to hurt buyers because not every buyer has thousands of dollars sitting around to pay this fee. So this is creating a lot of confusion. It's going to be chaotic. And so as a buyer, you need to be patient. Buying a home is still the number one best investment that you can make. Building wealth through real estate is an amazing thing. I personally believe in it. There's some naysayers out there that say, no, you need to invest all your money in, real estate that's giving you passive income. Well, okay, but not every human is going to do that. People want a place to live with their family. They want to buy a home. They call it the American dream, and it really is. Like, think of those of you that are renting that might be watching right now, and you can't paint the walls. You have a dog in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment. You got to walk down 3 stairs to go walk the dog. Like, there's reasons that people want to have the comfort of something that they call home. Home is your sanctuary. So that being aside, this is going to make a lot of changes. So if we understand it, I want you to understand it so you can get through it. Okay. So here's where we are 5 years later after all this debacle started. And again, I think there are some good changes that are going to come through a lot of this. Transparency and understanding to be one of them. I think it's very important for buyers to understand that they're being represented and that agent is earning a fee. Now, so I turn the tables and ask you, do you expect to go work a 40? Well, most agents that I know work about a 70-hour week, but do you expect to work and not be compensated? I mean, the answer logical is no, unless you're volunteering, of course. So it's common that they're compensated. So this is going to bring a lot of transparency to how much are they making and where is it coming from? Okay. So let's cover buyers first. If you're a seller watching this, I think it's interesting for you to understand what the buyers are experiencing, because this is going to help you sell your house faster by understanding. Now, again, this is my opinion, where really from the buyer's perspective, I think that this is going to cause a lot of confusion. It's going to cause a lot of misunderstanding. It's going to cause a lot of mistakes if it's not done properly. And that's why I'm here. Real facts, no BS, right here. And by the way, I invite all of you, if you're not watching me on YouTube, check out my YouTube channel, Loan with Jen. I release several videos every week, real facts, no BS, so that you can understand what's going on, everything mortgage, so that you can make good decisions for yourself. Okay. So the new process as I see it, I think we're going to have about 7 steps total. I think it's going from 3 steps to about 7. So there's a lot of extra things that have to happen that this is going to cause, and that's okay. It's in the spirit of everybody knowing what's what and being transparent, which is a good thing. So the new process, step number one, talk to a lender. Now, I wasn't sure when I was doing this outline whether to do step 1 is talk to a lender or step 1, talk to a realtor. Really, I mean, it's okay if you know a realtor and you know who you're going to use, but you need to talk to a lender as fast as possible, because you've got to know what's what. You cannot, I mean, you can start looking at houses without talking to a lender, but that's a huge mistake. What's your buying power? I actually, this happened. I had Maria called me one Monday morning, and she was a buyer, so excited. And she says, oh my God, I'm so excited. We saw this house over the weekend. The realtor of the house, Julie, told me to call you. My family, my kids already are like putting the colors on the walls of the rooms that are going to be theirs. Like, she was excited. I said, all right, let's do it. So I started taking the application. My heart started to sink. I could tell from the questions and the answers that she did not qualify for this $700,000 house. She qualified for a $200,000 house. Now, this is a drastic example, but what happened to Maria does not have to happen to you. I experience people every day that are looking at homes more than they can afford. And when they find out what the payment is, they're like, no. Because you may not know this, but online calculators are wrong. They're wrong because they don't calculate tax and insurance correctly. They don't include PMI if that's included. So I could go off a whole other hour about that, but I have a video about it on YouTube, so check it out. So what happened to Maria doesn't have to happen to you. So talk to a lender. Get referrals from friends. You know, not every lender's created equal, just like any business. Not every doctor's created equal. Not every pharmacy's created equal, right? Like you need to find out what's best for you. So getting recommendations from people. And by the way, using a lender in your local state market is always a great idea, because they know down payment assistance that's available. You know, these national companies, they do the best they can, but how can they memorize 50 states of programs for buyers? It's impossible. It is impossible. So talk to a lender, get pre-approved. If you're in Texas, I'd love to talk to you. Just shoot me a message, send me a DM. Would love to talk to you about that. I lend primarily in Texas. And find out what's what. Okay. I would say 6+ months out is not too soon, because you need to, the clients, the buyers that have the most success are looking forward and preparing themselves and getting homework so that they can make the very best decisions instead of being under the gun. Like, oh my God, I have to go so fast. My lease expires, or whatever the case may be. Okay. So step number 2, interview the realtors. Now, this is going to be more important than ever, because remember in the beginning, I mentioned you're going to be required to sign a buyer's rep agreement. Now I'm going to pause here for a minute. There are going to be some realtors that will say, oh no, don't worry. You don't have to sign a buyer's rep, and I'll go ahead and show you a house. Okay. Number 1, that's irresponsible. Now, especially in this new era, if they're not willing to guard their own money, Do you really think that they're going to guard yours? So that's going to be a red flag. Red flag. If a realtor is not discussing their commission with you, talking about the options, getting it set in stone and putting it on there, you really should think twice. Okay. So let's say, for example, I'm gonna give you an example here. Let's say, for example, that the house is $400,000 and you agree with the realtor that their commission is 3% of the price. Now, I say 3% because that's kind of common. Again, negotiable. I'm not price setting here. I am merely saying I've closed almost 5,000 loans in my career, so I've seen a lot, and I've seen 3% is kind of common. Okay. But again, everything's negotiable. You talk to your realtor, you guys come up with what's fair. Whatever it is, in this example, $400,000 house, 3%. So that means that their compensation would be $400,000 times 3%, that's $12,000. Now their compensation is not due until closing. Okay, so that's important for you to know. It's not due up front. And the compensation may or may not be paid by the seller. We're going to continue to go through that in a minute. So it's important to agree with the realtor, be prepared for step number 3. Once you talk about what's what, number 3, be prepared to sign a buyer's rep agreement. Now, the buyer's rep agreement, let's put up another slide here. Buyer's rep agreement is going to cover, now every state's a little different. I want to make just a quick pause here. They all say the same thing, but every state's a little different. So I'm being pretty generic here. Now I live in Texas, so this is kind of what Texas says. The time period that it covers, it's very common that it's 6 months, but you may agree to 3 months. Whenever I enter into a new contract with somebody, like my social media person, for example, I'm like, no, we're going to do 60 days and then we're going to go from there. So whatever time period you come up with, okay? So that's what the agreement's for. Compensation that you're agreeing to, again, is it hourly? Is it a flat fee? Or is it a percentage of the sales price of whatever it is that you buy? Okay. And then area of town. So like, for example, I live in the Houston and surrounding areas. So that would cover Houston and all the burbs, right? So it wouldn't cover Austin, or it wouldn't cover Dallas. Like it's going to specify what area it is that agent would represent you. So again, it's up to you guys to decide. Maybe you want that agent only to represent you in the Houston proper area, and you want to have the freedom to go use another agent that if you decide to go to Katy. So again, it's all in the agreement. So make sure that you read what you're signing. I think it's like a 1 or 2 page agreement. It's not like it's pages and pages of small print. It's going to be very, very clear. And ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Okay. So don't just sign and say, yeah, whatever. Like, this is important. Okay. So how to choose a realtor. Now, this is going to be more important than ever. Just like I mentioned, not all lenders are the same. Not all stores are the same. Like, do you prefer to go to Lowe's versus Home Depot? Like, how do the people treat you? Do they have enough people in the aisles? Like, literally, like, it's the same thing. What are the things that you should be thinking about when you are thinking about choosing a realtor? The number one thing that I think that you should do, this is my opinion and my 29-year experience, you need to ask friends and family, because that's the best indicator of a good experience. They've already been vetted. They've already had a good experience. Now, it doesn't always mean that it's a sure thing, but it's a very good start. Okay. So get a couple of names, ask a coworker, ask a family member, ask a friend. Now more than ever, it's going to be important. If it was me and I was a realtor, I would do kind of an intro call with someone. You want to see, like, what area of town does this realtor work in your area of town? If they're driving an hour to come see you every time, that may not work out. because they're going to have a super limited schedule. What hours do you need them to work? Okay. Like that's super important. If you work the night shift and you can only see houses from 10 to 12 every day, the realtor needs to know that. So be prepared to discuss your availability. In fact, we have a borrower right now. He can only see houses on Saturdays from, I don't know, 4 to 6 or something. Like he works every day, super hard worker, him and his wife both, but they can hardly be together. So that kind of information is super important when you're talking to a realtor and their availability. Okay. So part of town, you need to Google them. What's their expertise? Is this like the first house they've already sold? Now, nothing against newbie realtors, because I once was a newbie loan officer, and I can tell you, no one worked as hard as me. No one. And that's how I gained my reputation over the years. However, experience is important, or at least do you know that experience, that they have a mentor or someone behind them to help them when there's something that they don't know. Okay. So that's really important. The other thing, are they professional? Are they organized? Like, do they show up in a t-shirt and jeans when they come to see for the first time? And maybe that's how you show up. So maybe that's okay. Or are they in a suit and tie? Like, it just depends. Everyone has different criteria. Okay. It depends who you are. It depends what you expect. Level of professionalism is different for everybody. So, you know, if you're someone who uses bad language and you want a realtor that uses bad language, well, okay, then maybe that's what you want. So that's an extreme example, but you're going to get a feeling one way or the other when you talk to this person on the phone, etc., if you guys are kind of a fit. It's just an instinct, I think. So that's why I think it's important to talk to a couple, talk to a few, and see who you might have some good mojo with in the beginning. Okay. You know, have them send you some information. You know, the realtors are going to take the lead on this. I'm just saying that as you're dealing with them, are they sloppy in their work? Do they make mistakes? Do they make spelling errors? Like, these are big things. They're going to be handling your future house negotiation. Like, I think this stuff is important. I'm just giving you ideas on how to narrow things down and trust your instinct when you're going from realtor to realtor. Okay. So the next thing that we'll go over is step number 4. And thanks for hanging in there with me. There's still some good stuff to come. So you want to keep hanging in there with me. We're going to go through some calculations and what the options are. Don't worry, I'm getting to it. Step number 4, once you figure out what your realtor's compensation is, and you talk to that realtor and sign that buyer's rep agreement, you're going to have to talk again to your lender. In fact, your lender is going to need a copy, because you need to be prepared now that you need to understand all scenarios of, number 1, if you check the slide out, number 1, the seller is including the comp and the price. That's ideal for a buyer. Okay. Is that that's how you roll in closing costs, by the way. You pay it in the price. Okay. So, is it there, or is the seller paying a portion? Like, maybe your realtor is a 2% commission and the seller's only paying 1%. Like, I don't know. That means you'd have to pay 1% out of your pocket. What does that mean to you? Number 2, the seller says, I'm paying 0, nothing, nada. And that means you have to, if you agreed to 2 or 3% with the realtor, that means that's what they would be due. So you need to understand and be prepared. Now, it's very hard to understand which scenario you're going to have because we don't know who the seller is yet. So that's where we're going to get into a little bit more detail in just a sec. So how does this affect the lending? This is the first of a little bit, just to give you just a little bit of an understanding. And again, I want to hear your questions on this. This is difficult stuff, y'all. This is a lot to absorb. Buyers really haven't had to do this in a while because, I mean, 99% of the cases, it's always been included in the price in the 29 years that I've done this. So this is a big change. How does this affect the lending? We're going to use $400,000 as an example again, because it's, I don't know, it's easy. So let's just say, for example, that your buyer agent compensation is 3% that y'all have agreed to. It's in the agreement, etc. That means that their commission is $12,000, their compensation. And so if the seller is including it in the price, well, that's perfect because you don't come out of pocket with anything in that case. Let's say seller pays half of it. So they'll pay, let's say they're paying 1.5% and you agreed to 3%. So that leaves 1.5% due from you, right? That means $6,000 from you will be due at closing. Now we're going to go over in a minute options of like, how does that mean? Like, can I finance that? Can I, like, what do I do? Like, what happens? We're going to go through that. The next option could be that the seller is going to pay zero, which would mean that you, if you agreed to a $12,000 or 3% fee, let's say the house price was $400,000, that would mean $12,000 was due. And this would be payable at the closing. When you pay your down payment, your closing costs, this would be added to that. Okay. So really important to know. So how do you know? Like, oh my God, so many choices. How do you know what to expect? So, you know, a realtor's responsibility and ethical duty, they have to show you every house. They have to. But it's human to think that you aren't going to want to see houses that don't offer any compensation. Well, we don't know which ones those are. It's not listed anywhere anymore on the multiple listing service. Now, I think what's going to happen is a lot of different listings might have a separate website where it can be in an alternate place. So this is where really having a realtor is really going to help guide you, and you'll be able to figure this out. Okay. But I'm just, again, facts. I just want to give you facts and give you tips so that you can make the best decision for yourselves. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, let's go through this first. You're going to look at homes. And again, is the seller paying 3%? Are they paying 0%? Are they paying 2%? Like, how do I know? Okay. So this is going to be a little bit cray-cray. It's going to be cray-cray. It's going to take longer to buy a house. Like, the days of slamming a home sale through in 21 days are probably over, but we'll see. So how do you know? How do you know what you're going to have to pay, etc.? And I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, I'm just going to do this by myself. Forget this realtor thing. I mean, this is common. This is normal for you to have these thoughts. What do I need a realtor for anyway? I can do everything on the internet. I can just look at it on the internet. I can just call the listing agent to go get in the house. And why do I need a realtor anyway? So I have a YouTube video about this called Should I Use a Realtor? I encourage you to watch it. My channel on YouTube is called Loan with Jen. All my handles on social media, all that's Loan with Jen. And just type in on the page, should I use a realtor? Y'all, you really need to understand this. We'd be here for a while if I listed everything that a realtor does. But I'm such a proponent of realtors because in the almost 5,000 loans that I've closed, y'all, it's so crucial. Like, especially you first-time buyers out there, maybe if you've bought 10 houses, yeah, take a whirl at it on your own. But I bought 4 houses and I'm in the business, and I would not do it on my own. I wouldn't sell on my own, and I wouldn't buy on my own because you know what? I'm busy. I'm busy lifing. I'm busy doing my thing. I want someone to hold my hand, negotiate. There's who's going to let you in the house, who's going to be on your side. A listing agent, I'm here to tell you, is not going to be on your side. They have a fiduciary responsibility to their seller. They don't have a responsibility to you. They don't. I mean, they have to be nice to you. I mean, they're going to be nice, but they're not going to tell you, they're not going to help you when you've got a 100-page inspection report and you're trying to decide how much is all this stuff going to cost? Like, what should I ask for? How should I negotiate? First-time buyers, y'all, especially, even multiple buyers. Like, I wouldn't even know how to go in on that kind of stuff. Like, I want someone to help me to do that. And I'm experienced. More than just that, knowing what to ask for, knowing what a property is worth. So when you see a home on the internet for $400,000, how do you know that that's what it's worth? I mean, a seller can put a house up for anything that they want. And trust me, there are sellers out there that their house, the market is really worth 380 and they're putting 400 on there just to see if anyone is stupid enough to pay it. I'm telling you, this is a real thing. So as a buyer, how do you know? How do you know what something is worth? This is where realtors, one of the many, many things that they do, y'all, I think I sat down in my video that you'll watch, said, should I use a realtor? I think I list at least 20 things. And there's probably 30. Okay. Again, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of realtors, well, thousands really at this point over my career. They're hard workers. They're hard workers, and they do a lot for their buyers, and they are your best advocate. Okay. Because trust me, you're going to be freaking out many times. You're trying to move your family. You're pregnant. You're like, oh my God, what am I doing? You're nervous. You're confused. You're scared. Like, they really do help you. They really do in so many different ways. Let's go to, okay. So you find the house. Let's say you find a house and you see something. The realtor is going to find out before you make the offer, hey, are they offering compensation or are they not? So they're going to make phone calls. There's going to be a ton of back and forth. It's going to be chaotic. But regardless, they're going to find the information. Then I suggest that you get in contact with your lender and you do what I'm coining it as a pre-offer call. Because once you understand how much compensation the seller is offering on the house that you love, that you can imagine your family in, and you're like, okay, this is where I want to raise my children. You need to understand, am I going to have any extra money out of pocket? Now, the easiest solution is that it's included, that like the amount that you're paying your realtor equals the amount that's being offered, but that may not always be the case. I don't know. Who knows? So get in touch with your lender. This is where lending is super important. I'm just going to pause for a second because I'm going to talk to you out there, those of you that are really comfy and you're super okay with online lending and like no service. And I'm a little tainted in my view because I've been only referral for 29 years, thousands of clients. Okay. And I don't keep saying that to brag. I'm trying to let you know that I'm credible and that I have experience. Okay. That's the only reason. I'm up at night worrying about you, and I worry about you on Sunday too. Like if you call me on a Sunday and you're a pre-approved buyer and you say, Jen, we just found the house that we love. The buyer's not paying, the seller's not paying all the compensation. What does that mean? Listen, I'm like racing home from church and I'm calling you and pulling out my computer before I cram food down my kid's throat. Like, I'm like, okay, let me fit this in. I can tell you, when you're using this little online business that some of you are attracted to, they're not up at night worrying about you. They're not. And if you're an online lender watching this, I'm sorry, but it's true. They don't know you. They don't have an affiliation with you. There's no connection. You're just a number. So this is where lender is going to be more important than ever. Can you access them on the weekend? Can you call them when you're freaking out and say, oh my God, can you please help me? Because I found the house that I love and there's other offers on it and I need to get this house. Like, this is the place that we want to live. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay. Think twice on your lending because it's important. It's important. Who's going to be up at night worrying about your well-being Is it going to be the person that you were referred to, that you've chosen, that they give you good service? Now, obviously, I also have to earn the part. You know, the lender has to like be on it, organized, professional, educational, whatever it is that you desire. I mean, they can't be like a total idiot and still get your business. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if all the boxes check, 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 really think twice about who's advising you and who's available for you in your deepest, darkest hour of when you need it. Okay. Okay. You make the offer. Let's say that you found the house you love. You do the pre-offer call. Step number 7 is going, oh, well, first option, sorry. I'm looking at my timeline at the same time that I'm talking to the camera. Mess. So before you make the offer, let's say, okay, so we do that pre-close call, pre-offer call. Okay. These are the 4 options that you have. This is it, y'all. There's only 4 options. This is as good as it gets because you cannot finance in closing costs. The way you finance in closing costs, the only way, unless the lenders start to make a change, which I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but right now as things are, the only way to roll in closing costs is by paying a higher price for the property. Instead of $400, maybe you pay $412 in our example of the 3%, right? So everything's up to negotiation. So let's say you pay a higher price. Let's say the seller says, hey, nope, 0. And the realtors go back and forth and you pay $412. I'm just saying this is an example. That's a way of rolling it in. Now we're going to loan you 97% or 0% if you're a 0 loan. Like we're going to loan you a percent of that new price. So that's like rolling it in. And the one thing I'll say here is that the house needs to appraise for that amount. Okay. Otherwise, you're going to have to come out of the money out of pocket. But I'm just going to move forward in this example and just pretend that, let's say the seller in this case, in this $400,000 house says, no, I'm not paying any commission. There's negotiation. Everyone agrees that he's going to up the price. He or she is going to up the price, or they is going to up the price. And it's $412. So, and the appraisal comes in fine. Okay. So that's how you roll it in. That's option number 1. Option number 2 is you pay out of pocket the amount that's not covered. Let's say that you agreed with your realtor of 3% and the seller's paying 1%. That means 2% would be due from you out of your pocket as an additional closing costs. Not ideal. Buyers hate to come up with money. It's such a pain because they're coming up with a down payment in most cases, unless you have down payment assistance. They're coming up with closing costs, again, unless you have some down payment assistance. It's a hardship for 90% of the people, okay? If you're watching this and you're money bags and you got all kinds of savings, good for you. But even a bunch of rich people that I've taken their application for, they don't want to come out of money with a bunch of cash. They want to leave it in the market where it's earning because it was a bad day on the stock market and they're losing their tail and they don't want to liquidate more money than they have to. Option number 3 is you could put less money down. So let's say for a minute that you're putting down 5% or 10% or 20%. What we can do is we can shave back your loan a little bit and loan you a little bit more money. So you're not putting as much down. You're putting down less to help you have more out-of-pocket money available to pay this fee. Now that, next to the seller including it, that's pretty ideal. So the people that I'm talking to now are the people that don't have that. These are my single mamas that you barely can get in this house. And we're scraping by with every ounce, every penny of down payment assistance. You barely got a gift from someone for the closing costs, or maybe you need a seller credit. I don't know. Like you're barely getting by. You don't have a ton of extra funds laying around and you're already doing 0% down because we're doing a DPA loan, down payment assistance. you have nowhere to go. You have no additional, like, we can't loan you any less because you're already being loaned the least amount possible. Does that make sense? Or you're already putting down the least amount possible. So those are the people that are going to really have a hardship. And option number 4 is if you're not doing down payment assistance, if you qualify, we could. So some people choose not to do down payment assistance, but we could essentially do that. All in all, all of these scenarios have different repercussions depending on your credit score. Like, I could take an hour and go through them here now, but you really need to get with a lender as soon as possible to know what that means for you. You know, oh, if I put less than 20% down, I'd have to have PMI. Yes, but if you're doing an 83% loan instead of an 80% loan and your credit score is super high, like, PMI is nothing, y'all. It's like barely anything. And it'll go away probably in 12 months when you get to the 80%. So, like, there's a lot of ins and outs that you want to get with a lender to educate on all those 4 options, because there's only 4 options. That's the only way to go. And what I put up on that slide. Okay. If you're a seller, my slide number 7. I get carried away. My slide number 7 is you offer and you come up to something with your realtor, you make an offer and negotiate back and forth, whatever. It's going to be back and forth, maybe take a couple days, who knows? And you come up with something that's agreeable to everybody. Okay. So now I want to talk to the sellers out there. I'm going to someday be a seller. I don't know when I'm going to sell my house, and my house is expensive. So my commission to the realtors is going to be big. But I want to implore with you that most sellers are people, not companies. I mean, there's companies out there that gobble up properties and sell them, and they don't really have feelings. It's just business. But most people are people selling their house, okay, their primary residence. You're going to go somewhere else and you're going to expect the same treatment, number 1. Number 2, do you really want to limit the number of people that can buy your house because of this? And number 3, do you want to potentially go at it alone, forget realtors altogether, which certainly you could do, and be open to a lawsuit? Like, apparently the industry is all lawsuit happy. That's how this whole thing started. But when buyers and sellers are not properly represented, mistakes happen, things get overlooked. It doesn't really ever work out great. They didn't know about something about the inspection, and then we find out later the house is a lemon and they have all kinds of problems. I mean, just so many things can happen. So if you're a seller and you're considering that you're one of those 0% people, of course you want every penny that you can. You're human. We all do. But at what expense? At the expense of having less buyers be able to buy your house, at the expense of not anyone being represented, and opening yourself up to a future potential lawsuit. Like, do you really want to put bad mojo into the universe and let everybody just fend for themselves? I don't know. Maybe you do. Maybe you are that person. But lots of things to think about. My goal here today was to give you real facts, no BS. Please keep following me, Loan with Jen, on all platforms. I release a couple videos per week. I go live every Thursday, and I'd love to hear your comments on this. So comment, DM, whatever.